All right, December 1st, 2021. Mother, you have a story on the ongoing adventures of Spinnerkin.
Well, as you recall, the last time we saw John and Spinnerkin, John was standing on this dragon. And to say that he was surprised is definitely an understatement. But he was a very polite boy, and he had some concern that since he was standing on the dragon, that it might hurt the dragon. And so he asked Spinnerkin, am I hurting you? And Spinnerkin didn't answer. It's just, but there's this deep rumbling, and he feels the dragon hill, if you will, start to move. Well, John was a brave boy, but that was, when everything around you is moving and you know that it's a live thing. So John says, he felt quite bravely. John said, were you planning to eat me? Because if you are, I would rather you not. So that just made the rumbling really, really accelerate, and poor John was practically bouncing up and down, and he finally realized that the dragon was laughing at him. At which point in time, John really felt it was time for him to go. So he said goodbye to Spinnerkin. He said it had certainly been interesting to meet him, and perhaps he would come by if the rope was hanging down and see him again. And so Spinnerkin said, well, if it is, come see me. John promised that he would. Climbed down the rope, got to the bottom of the ground after a long climb. A very relieved and happy Viola, who told him in no uncertain terms that he was not to take off like that again. So John gathered up Viola and off he went home again. Well, over the next few days, he thought to himself, did that really happen? Is there really such a thing as dragons? But he thought there was only one way to find out, and that was for he and Viola to go back to where he was. And that's exactly what he did. So he went out and where the rope had been hanging down, and there was no rope hanging down this time. So he thought, well, maybe he did imagine it. So he called up as loud as he could, Spinnerkin, Spinnerkin, are you there? And lo and behold, the rope came down, but new to the adventure, now the rope was attached to a big basket. A basket big enough for both John and Viola to climb into. Well, Viola didn't hesitate. Viola barreled right into the basket and sort of looked at John, well, are you coming or not? And so John climbed in too and tugged on the rope, and not quite sure how Spinnerkin did it, but he hauled the basket up. The basket came to a rest on the back of Spinnerkin. So John and Viola stayed in the basket for a little while, and then he felt the dragon start to move. And so that's exactly what he did. He felt the basket very slowly sink down toward the earth, and then Spinnerkin take off flying. Well, it was rather scary, but John was a brave boy and Viola was a very brave dog, so they clung to the basket as hard as they could. And they went flying all over the place, seeing the most amazing things. John had no idea where they were, that they were all over the place. Jungles and deserts and oceans and all sorts of things. And so he came to a place that he thought looked rather interesting, sort of a jungly, foresty sort of thing. And so John tugged on the basket, hoping that Spinnerkin would let him down there so he could explore a little bit, which is exactly what he wanted to do. So Spinnerkin let the basket down. John and Viola climbed out and started looking around. All of a sudden, a large, ugly, purple vine came snaking out of the woods and grabbed John right around his leg. Well, it was a big shock, and next thing you know, it's moving up his leg and onto his body. Well, Viola wasn't having any of that. Viola barked her head off, flew at the vine, and bit it. Well, that was quite a surprise to the vine, and the vine let go. So, quick as a bunny, John and Viola both leaped back in the basket, gave a sharp tug, and off they went again. So, anyway, so they kept on going for a bit longer, and this time John kept a sharp lookout for poisonous vines and other such things, and pretty soon they came to a lovely sandy beach, which looked like it was very, very warm and appealing and so nice. And so John tugged on the basket, and Spinnerkin let the basket down, and he and Viola hopped out. And so they're dabbling their feet in the water, in the warm water, and just thoroughly enjoying it. And all of a sudden, a whole group of natives rushes out and starts toward them. Viola wasn't having any of that either. She barked at them, and so John and Viola both leaped back into the basket, gave a sharp tuck, and away they went. Now, obviously it was a bit of a problem communicating with Spinnerkin, because there was no way that they could let Spinnerkin know they wanted to stop or they wanted to go or anything like that. So that was something for them to think about. But anyway, that was the end of the adventures for that day. So John and Viola were both back in the basket. They climbed in, and away they went, and pretty soon came to country that John recognized because it was his parents' land. And so he got lower and lower and lower until the basket was finally let down, and that was the end of the Spinnerkin adventures for that day.
Great stuff. Sounds like a good time.